It's my pleasure to introduce your guest speaker this week. It's Teamwork's Global Head of Sales, Adrian Foley. Welcome to the webinar, Adrian.
Thank you very much, Alan, and happy Friday to yourself and everyone else as well.
To start off, can you give a background on our sales operations here in Teamwork?
I would say, first of all, it's my first job in a SaaS environment, right? So I've been learning a huge amount over the last 12 months, and very different to the experience I certainly had in the past, where I was selling things like hardware, perpetual software, and overall IT solutions and so on and so forth. So very, very different. The customer experience is paramount to everything that we do in Teamwork. And the things that I guess I had to pick up and learn and understand were, we do still work in a funnel, like probably every other organization that's out there, but we now focus very much on the number of trials that we get in on the top of that funnel. So if you think about it, our marketing department are delivering content out there into the marketplace to try to drive more trials into that top of the funnel for us. Now, that was something that, I guess, for me, when I saw that first, I thought, okay, it's a trial, great, let's just move on now to the next stage. But of course, there's so many segments in and around the trial. So, first of all, when a customer comes in or a prospect comes in for a trial, do we get them to a close one stage? And in between those two, there are so many different components, things that, again, for me, I never thought of. That, for example, if a customer takes a trial, do they add some users so we can figure out that they now want to spread out to more people in their organization? When they take a trial, do they go and create a project? Do they use some of the features, or do they just create a trial, and in some cases they just don't do anything else? So we've got amazing information around the funnel, because as a SaaS organization we can see those kinds of things. But in Teamwork, we get started with those trials, and what happens is we then score those trials to become MQLs, or marketing qualified leads. So the marketing qualified leads, then they drop into the first team, or the first human touch that they have is into our sales development reps, or SDRs. And we have a team of 12 SDRs, and their job is then to qualify those marketing qualified leads. So there's lots of methodologies, lots of sales methodologies that people use to qualify leads. There's BANT and there's CHAMP. We've used BANT to a large extent over the last, 2 years or so, but we've probably loosened up some of those criteria now. So BANT is, of course, budget, authority, need, and timeline. And the biggest impact that we found on our business and on results further down the funnel was around the need. So we really are doubling down on understanding what's the challenge, the pain, the requirement from the customer. What are they struggling to do? How can we actually help them, and how can we create value? So the SDRs then are having those conversations, they're qualifying the MQL, and when they feel that they can actually hand that over, it becomes a sales qualified lead, and it goes into the sales team. We took a decision earlier this year as well to have a large account sales team and a mid-market SMB sales team. And we delineated it by the number of employees that we saw from organizations. And the reason that we did that, I guess, is because the sales cycle in a large account, the language that we use in a large account, the cadence of a sales cycle, and the content that we might deliver into some of those larger accounts is very much different than what we see in the mid-market and in the SMB space. So we go trial, we go MQL, we go SQL. Those SQLs then get sent out to the sales teams. The sales teams then have a decision to make. Do I accept this SQL as an opportunity, or is there a reason there that I might reject that? We accept today at about 80%. So we accept 80% of the SQLs that get pushed out into the team, into the sales team. And that's probably industry standard, I would say. And of course, then we look at that 20% that we reject, and we try to understand why we rejected it and how did it come through our qualification process and get to become an SQL. And again, as I mentioned, it's all about the data. So we're very clear about the conversion percentage we have in each step of the funnel. Once it drops in then to the sales guys, it becomes an SAO. So sales accepted opportunity, and of course the opportunities are we add the value at that stage, and it's those values that obviously build our pipeline that we try to use to deliver our results every week, every month, and every quarter.
So the global recession itself, it's naturally causing or it's going to demand change in a lot of different ways. What is your general view on the market at this point?
Oh, wow. I think that the global market is in a state of shock. I think everything that we've seen is completely unprecedented. And I was thinking as I was saying that, if I had a dollar or a euro for every time I've heard unprecedented in the last 8 weeks, I think I could probably retire at this stage. It's been phenomenal. I think we're even seeing here in Europe, 10% plus decline in GDP right across the European economies. Unemployment, very, very high in most European countries. And I think that the thing that's sort of affecting customers and their business at the minute is about the unprecedented uncertainty. I think people don't really understand or realize how long it will take to get back to some sense of normality. And I think there's this question hanging over most people around, are we going to see a second wave, and what would that look like, and how would we manage it, and could we go back into a lockdown situation again? So it does feel like, globally and certainly in Europe, we've seen and we are seeing some serious recessionary factors coming into play. I think people and customers that I talk to every day are being affected in lots and lots of different ways. I think we've been really lucky in Teamwork because, we've seen customers obviously shift to remote working. And I honestly believe that we have a very, very strong solution for customers who are moving to remote working. Speaking to customers, the challenges and the priorities vary. It's easy for us in some cases to say to a customer, hey, look, you should be buying Teamwork because it'll help you to manage your business. I've spoken to customers who have said, hey, Adrian, we don't have enough laptops for the people who are working at home. So the priorities of companies have been different, I think, in terms of what we might want or what we might want to see versus what they have to do themselves. Access to broadband, I would say, security issues, challenges with all sorts of collaboration tools and so on and so forth. So while we feel we've a very good fit, I think customers have had different priorities while they've managed their way through the last few weeks.
Absolutely. And so just following on from that last question, with your understanding of the market, how have you adjusted your strategy to meet those demands?
We've probably seen two or three things happen in different ways. So, for example, as I mentioned, we had a quite strong Q1, and we're having a fairly okay Q2 in terms of my commitment is in the 90%. And I think the reason for that is, we are managing to convince customers of the value that Teamwork can bring to their business, even in these very, very difficult times. We've seen lots of customers expand their license count. That said, we've also seen some contraction. So we've seen customers, let's say, who have had redundancies in their business, or in cases where the business has disappeared, they've contracted the number of licenses and they've said, hey, look, we'll come back when this is all over. So we've seen a very positive reaction, and we've seen some of a negative reaction for sure. I think the overall sales cycle has gone out for us, and we measure this on both segments of the market. It's probably gone out at least 10 to 14 days, I would say. And that's been driven by, customers who are saying, look, I'm going to wait and see here. I want to see what happens to my business. I want to see what happens to my customers. So when I get to the end of the summer, when we get back to some sense of normality, we can come back and look at Teamwork again. So that's definitely happened to us. And I think the sign-off process probably on some of our bigger deals has gone from, 2 or 3 people that would have signed off a deal in the past to, maybe 4 or 5 people that have to sign off a deal now in the current times, because obviously cash is extremely important for organizations. And in Teamwork, I think one of our key values is, putting customers first. And so we've done a few things to try help customers through this situation. So we've talked to customers about credit. We've looked at, getting them extended credit. We've looked at things like, breaking up credit payments into every quarter where they normally would have paid us annually. And we've actually launched a new price plan called Teamwork One, which is basically our suite of products that we've brought together into one plan, and we've positioned it out there at a very, very aggressive price. And again, the idea behind that was to help, mid-market SMB customers who may have multiple tools that they're using, maybe paying, $1,000 a month, and we've come out with a one-size-fits-all for that market, and it's a very, very aggressive price, so they can save some money there. So we probably have a list of things that we've worked on over the last 6 or 8 weeks to just support companies as they go through this difficult time.
Now that we find ourselves all working remotely, well, in Ireland anyway, we don't have access to that physical sales floor right now. So how are
Yeah.
you sharing expertise and motivating your team during this pandemic?
We've built some sales playbooks, and those sales playbooks that we've had them for the last year, and they're everything that a salesperson needs to know about, how to speak to a customer, how to present to the customer, how to process an order, all of the product and information that we need, and we've put that into Spaces, which is one of our own solutions. And I think, that has definitely helped everybody because they know where to find and access the information. Now, that hasn't changed. If we were in the office, that was there. As we work remotely, that's there as well. We also run the EOS system, to run our business, which means that we have weekly management meetings, we have weekly team meetings, and every second week we have one-on-ones. So every second week I do a one-on-one with all of my direct reports. All of my direct reports do that one-on-one with each of their teams. We have daily team stand-ups, and we have a weekly teamwork all hands. So, I would say the motivation is coming from being connected. I would say, we're connecting with people, we're making sure everybody feels that they're included in everything that we're doing. And we're using probably our own chat channel as well, I guess, a lot for things like, wins that we've got, interesting information. And actually, the guys set up a work from home chat channel, which I'm sure you're aware of, Alan, and there's lots of interesting things that come up on that. It's photographs of people at weekends, photographs of dogs and children and so on, just keeping it a bit human and keeping it lively. So I think they're the things that are certainly helping, people to stay connected and stay somewhat motivated.
Just speaking to the onboarding, I see you've added some key hires over the past couple of months. How did you adjust the onboarding process in order to make them successful while working 100% remotely?
Yeah, so we've onboarded probably about 10 to 12 people, I would say, since the crisis kicked off. Again, the structure that we had in place before the crisis is the same structure that we have now. So again, back to using and eating our own dog food, using our own tools, the onboarding project and programs that we set up when we were in the office, we're now implementing them and delivering them, executing on them in the same way. Of course, it's probably easier when you're sat across a table from somebody, and the questions and the interaction can be much better. But the structure of what we do, I think, has been really, really important, and we're continuing to do that. And of course, the onboarding varies depending on the types of people we've brought on. I mean, for example, we've brought on some senior salespeople in the US, so we're not really teaching them to sell. If we do that, we've probably got the wrong people. So it's really more about how do we help them to understand teamwork, how do we help them to understand the internal processes that we've got, and how do we help them to understand the solutions and the selling, right? So it's different. The SDRs that we have, much more about sales skills, about product, and so on and so forth, and about that qualification that I talked about earlier. And again, when I look at it over the last 8 to 10 weeks, I mean, there's some things that have worked okay in that process. So we can build demo sites for all the individuals, and they can do that individually, remotely. That's not a problem. We can probably do a lot of the product training remotely. But things like meet the founders. So we have a really nice thing in Teamwork where once you join, a week or two later, you meet the founders for a coffee, right? And that's face to face. Now we can still do it, of course, over Zoom or Google Hangouts, but it's not the same. The people engagement, of course, on that onboarding is not the same. I've got people in the team today who I actually haven't met personally, besides maybe an interview, a few weeks ago. Haven't met them in the job since. And things like, I always say, going for your first lunch with your teammates is a really important part of your onboarding. You feel you're part of a team. You feel you're getting to know people a bit better. There's things like that we do miss, and no matter how many Zoom calls and stuff we do, it's very hard to fill that in.
Totally agree. Some things just you can't substitute, but we'll do our best with what we have.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
diving a bit more into process, you've already spoken a little bit about the individual products like Teamwork Spaces for SOPs and handbooks. How has the rest of the suite helped you work remote at this time?
Yeah, so the Teamwork Suite, as you know, is 5 products, and we probably use them all to the same extent. Desk, which is our communication tool. Every piece of communication for our customer base is going through Desk, which is great because it's one central location. We can go and check the communication. We can figure out what's happening. It's fantastic for us to track. And then we have a whole series of help docs that are in Desk that we can use just to become a bit more efficient with, customers asking particular types of questions on a repetitive basis, and we can do that. So Desk has been an integral part of what we're doing. I just mentioned chat there earlier on, the things like the work from home channels. And of course, chat is replacing probably the water cooler. It's replacing leaning over and asking your colleague, that tricky question and, trying to get some help from people. So chat is what is doing that for us now. And there's some really good stuff there, I think, like the videos and the funny stuff coming from some of the teams and so on. The third one, I suppose, is our CRM. So, as a sales team, we live in the CRM. And again, irrespective of COVID-19, CRM is there for us to manage all of our deals. All of our leads go into the CRM at the top of the funnel. And all the stages I mentioned earlier on, they're happening in that CRM tool. So again, for the sales team and for the SDRs, it's an integral part of what we do. So I spend a lot of time in the CRM. Our CRM actually is split into 2 segments. You have the lead part of the CRM, which is good for the SDRs because they live in that space. And then we have the opportunity part of the CRM, which is where the sales guys stay. So those 2 obviously work in unison, but you've got both teams working in the CRM quite a lot. And then the last one that you mentioned there was the spaces. So all of the documentation for our onboarding, all of the sales playbook, all sits in there. And again, it's something that everybody's used to because once they onboard, that's where we point them to. And for all of the information that they need on an ongoing basis, it's in the same place. So very, very helpful for us there. And then I would say bringing all of that together is teamwork, or AKA projects, which really allows us to manage everything from one-on-ones to all the programs, all the campaigns that we're running to generate more business, etc. in the market.
Just in terms of day-to-day operations, sales often goes hand in hand with finance, marketing, and onboarding. So has remote working impeded your ability to work cross-functionally?
No, not at all. And again, I suppose, we've been very lucky. We're eating our own dog food, we're using our own tools. All the things that I would have done when I was in the office are the same things we're doing now, except we're probably not just sitting across the table from the guys who are having various meetings. I think one of the key values and selling points of the Teamwork solution is, having multiple departments on a project, on a program, on a campaign, everybody working together, everybody keeping up to speed, everybody getting notifications, building collaboration, and supporting all the activity that's going on. So none of that has actually changed for us being remote, which has been tremendous, I think. And for all of us in Teamwork, it just goes to show, I think, the value, and we can see the value of our solution and what we're actually proposing to customers. So it's been really, really easy. I think the rest of the departments probably see it in the same way. I spend a lot of time working with marketing, working with CEG. And we have our joint programs that we work on together, and we can see all the information in one place. So I think that's really worked very, very well for us.
Were there any other challenges that you faced, or any insights that you'd like to share from the past couple of months?
Yeah, I would say, well, maybe more insights. I think the one thing I suppose I've learned is to maybe empower the team a bit more in this environment, right? There's no point in sort of checking up on people every hour because they are working remotely and you can't see them. So I guess letting people off to do what they need to do. I would also say that trying to establish how people will work together, be it things like, and I've got stuck with this myself, Zoom, Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, Teamwork, and so on, right? Teamwork and so on, right? So there's lots of tools out there. I think knowledge workers at the minute are using something like 10 apps, so it can be quite confusing. So I think sticking to something and understanding what your cadence of tools is and what you should be looking to use. I would say as well the distinguishing between work and home. I think, as I said, I'm in my bedroom, so taking that break during the day, going for the walk in the evenings, you know, doing all those things, you know, just looking after your mental health, I think has been incredibly important over the last few weeks. And then I suppose the last thing is just continuous communication. You know, communicate at every opportunity. I'm sure everybody would understand there's no such thing as over communication. But I think in this case and in these really difficult times, communication is critical. So they're the kind of things that I would say from an insight point of view I've seen over the last 2 months.